So Kevin De Bruyne looks like he's picked up a 3 to 4 month injury, which should possibly hasten the departure of Lucas Paqueta. So I understand there's some big news later on today or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but I won't discuss it anymore because what's the point? If there's going to be some new news sort of later on this afternoon, then we'll discuss it then. What is interesting is, from the Man City point of view, is their centre-back, Aymeric Laporte. Now, apparently, he is of interest to West Ham. West Ham pulled out of the deal to sign Harry Maguire. Some conflicting stories yesterday about, actually, we were never really that heavily in for him and whatnot. I think Darmashev reported that. I'm not sure how true that is. I think it's easy, again, to look, scratch beneath the surface and find conspiracy. I just think we couldn't get the deal done. I believe it was probably very, very difficult to deal with. I think we're perhaps not very good at closing transfer deals, and I think us trying to negotiate with someone who's tricky to negotiate with, who was probably looking to try and secure a payoff from Manchester United, was always going to be tricky. We don't have a great record at that, and we spoke about Jesse Lingard the other day. We were constantly trying to offer Man United money to get Jesse Lingard out, even when his contract was running down. And even though they knew they were going to lose money on him, they still did it anyway. So I think, you know what, it's just one of those things. Anyway, it looks like we've turned our attentions elsewhere. Now, Tar from Bayer Leverkusen is one of the people that apparently we've been linked with. Now, the interesting thing is we could have got him earlier on in the window for less, because he had a contract, he had a buyout clause, which I think elapsed at the end of June or something. So you would end up having to pay more now. But it's really the Laporte one that I do find interesting. But I should probably say at this point, I'm quite pleased that we've turned our attentions away from Harry Maguire for reasons I've gone into in previous videos. It's pointless talking about it again. I mean, Laporte was a really, really good player. I say was a good player. That's probably unfair. He is a good player. In fact, he looked like the best defender that Man City had in quite a long time before Ruben Diaz rocked up. Then he sort of stole his thunder, really, didn't he? And I think there was a point where Laporte looked absolutely undroppable. And I don't claim to have an encyclopedic knowledge of what goes on at Manchester City, but for one reason or another, it does seem like other people sort of curried a little bit more favour, and there were times last year, and certainly Diaz, Stones got back into the team, and Stones was playing this sort of weird role with a bit of freedom as well. But then again, you've got a Kanji there, who's really, I always thought was a centre-back who started playing in Carl Walker's position. And, well, it wasn't just that, was it? In fact, they had Ake, who's also a centre-back playing. I think they might have had 4 centre-backs across the back 4. Hey, what's this? Manchester City chat? It's certainly not. My point of the matter is, Laporte's a very, very good defender. If we're in for him, I think that's good. He's 29 years of age, though, and they reckon it might be about 40 million, which does seem very steep for a 29-year-old player. And it'll be very interesting to see what goes on with this one. Apparently, Arsenal are also interested, though. How much truth there is to that, I don't know. But as I understand it, it would only rests on them selling Folarin Balogun for 50 million. I can't imagine anyone's going to pay 50 million. Let's be fair, for an academy graduate who's played 1 season in France, just 1 season, 50 million is an awful lot of money. Probably doesn't seem so in Premier League terms, but if a Premier League club's not going to buy him, then the continent isn't awash with that much money. I think transfer spending on the continent is down massively. It only seems to be the Premier League and Saudi Arabia who aren't feeling the financial pinch at the moment. So that was quite interesting. Mark Robson, I think we've appointed him as head coach, promoted from the under-21s. He's become head coach under David Moyes, so an internal appointment there. He was wanted by Gary O'Neill at Wolves. So I think, that's good that he's stuck around, certainly. I'm just going to talk about Wolves now. Man City, Wolves, quite pleased with Gary O'Neill. Don't think he was treated very well at Bournemouth. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, actually, because I don't know. If he does well, I can see him being a West Ham manager one day. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think that's really interesting. If, for instance, if Bournemouth don't do so well and then Wolves do, Bournemouth might end up looking a little bit silly. But I do think that's interesting. I do like Gary O'Neill, though. I certainly do. Let's deal with a couple of things here. We've got Michail Antonio and Aaron Cresswell, who are both wanted by Gary O'Neill at Wolves. So it's looking like quite possibly a double transfer. Now, that's going to be no news to anybody here. What is interesting, though, is that before Gary O'Neill was appointed, Wolves were after those two players. Now, obviously, George Mendes was heavily involved at Wolverhampton Wanderers, but he's had his head turned. He's doing a lot of the buying and selling. It's funny, isn't it? An agent's had his head turned. He's doing a lot of the buying and selling in Saudi Arabia at the moment. So I don't know who's doing their recruitment, but I mean, they usually just buy Portuguese players. Now, obviously, someone else is doing it. And he's, oh, yes, go and get those two fellas from West Ham. What is interesting is, irrespective of who the manager is, they still do seem to have the targets of being Aaron Cresswell and Michail Antonio. Maybe it's just lazy journalism and it's just the same targets. But you do get the impression that certainly Michail Antonio wants to leave. I'm purposely haven't discussed Aaron Cresswell too much, and I'll be honest. I'll tell you why. I find it hard to believe that he's gone on strike. I just, that doesn't seem like Cresswell. It doesn't sound like Cresswell. And I know some people are saying, oh, that points to how bad things are under David Moyes. I just don't know. I just want to be sure before. I just think 10 years at a club sort of affords you that, doesn't it? That bit of loyalty, that benefit of the doubt. And I'd just like to give Cresswell the benefit of the doubt that he wouldn't go on strike. And maybe there's something else going on there. Who knows? Certainly, David Moyes has not been impervious to criticism at all. If you look back to yesterday's disclosure that Lucas Fabianski, who did a television interview saying how unhappy he was, you look to that, there was a lot of criticism for David Moyes as a result of that. Again, I'm going to have to do the disclaimer, and I do apologise for those of you that can read between the lines and understand, but I have to do it just because, well, I just have to. I am concerned about what David Moyes is doing at West Ham at the moment. What happened against Bournemouth concerned me. I think Gio summed it up. It felt like the 39th game of last season, Premier League terms, obviously. I just don't like it. I don't think he's the right man for the job in terms of bringing through the youngsters through the academy. So I'm far from happy with David Moyes. I just want to make that point. However, I didn't particularly agree. I didn't want to jump on his back because of Lucas Fabianski's story. As I understand it, David Moyes let Lucas Fabianski know on the Thursday that he wouldn't be playing on the Saturday. I think that's fine. Maybe, just maybe, I would have some sympathy for him if all the way leading up to the game, David Moyes had said, you're in goal. You're in goal against Bournemouth, Lucas. You're in goal. And then right before kickoff, he put the team sheet on the dressing room wall or whatever you do, and Fabianski wasn't in there. I would understand Fabianski being upset then. But for him to be told on Thursday, and then for the team to basically do training on Thursday and training on Friday with Areola between the sticks, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't see that as a reason to criticise David Moyes particularly. I know some people are going to take that as evidence. Oh, that's more evidence of Moyes' wrongdoing. I would just you don't have to. There's other stuff you can use than that. I just don't see it. I really, really don't see it. Unless there's something else within that video, within that interview that I've not heard, then I just don't see a massive problem with it. I really don't. He's been dropped. I mean, players don't like being dropped, do they? Has Fabianski been dropped before that? Maybe a little bit, but not much. I don't know. Look, he's 39 years of age. We've got a goalkeeper there who we signed from Paris Saint-Germain. I'm surprised it's taken as long as it has. I'm surprised it's taken 2 years for him to take the first team spot. And Fabianski did really, really well last season. But there were a couple of games last season. I've got my player ratings book somewhere. There were a couple of games last season where I think he was really shaky. There were times when he sort of cost us the game, and then he still kept his shirt for the next game. So I think he's done all right. I think David Moyes has done all right by Fabianski, actually. And in the same way, I think David Moyes has done all right by Michail Antonio. I don't know why Michail Antonio is so keen to move. I have a feeling he won't think that the grass is any greener, and unless he does go to Saudi Arabia, and then of course he's going to go for money. And do you know what? I wouldn't actually blame him for doing that at all. If it's not for footballing reasons, and it's a case of hold on, I can go over there and I can work 2 years and I can get another £10 million, then do you know what? Fine. As ever, my concern, and this is a legitimate concern with David Moyes, rather than him not picking Lucas Fabianski, a legitimate concern is It takes too long to bring in players. He does dither, and that is a major concern for me going into the transfer window. We've lost going into the second game of the season, we've lost so many players already. We do have funds there, and it's like, by the time you watch this video, I was sort of recording this late on Tuesday night. By the time you watch this video, it's going to be Wednesday morning. I mean, there were rumours about the next round of players to be signed, started on Monday, and James Ward-Prowse, well, it's sort of getting towards halfway through the week now. Where are these other players? So, unless there's going to be, it looks like, and I don't mind, by the way, as I said at the start of the video, I don't mind that we've lost out on Maguire, but that is another failed attempt. Just because I didn't particularly want him, doesn't, it might think, okay, that's great, but it's still another indicator that we ain't too good at doing this transfer stuff, and a lot of the players that we do go in for end up not coming. I think it's the best thing about that is we've walked away as quickly as we have, rather than, when we chased Jesse Lingard for 18 months, to use an example, and he just didn't want to come, and in the end we were sort of screwed, really, weren't we? So at least we've moved on from this, and maybe, the club or David Moyes or whoever has learnt their lesson not to spend too long pursuing a player. But we've seen loads of them. Do you know what? I'm not even going to say it's just David Moyes. I mean, Batshuayi. How many times did Batshuayi turn us down? 3, 4, something like that. You think we would have got the gist? I remember Idager Johnson turn us down on numerous occasions as well. So I don't think it's anything we're particularly good at. I'm glad we've walked away from this, but I am worried. It is an indicator of we're not great at getting deals over the line. So I do think it's important that we get our act together. I would like to see another player coming in this week. I do think that's it's reasonably important. I think it is. How much? The only reason I sort of dithered myself then, had a little second thought about it, was I'm not sure how much difference that's going to make against Chelsea. I'm really not so sure. But I think David Moyes certainly has decided he wants another centre-back, so he's going to need to do that. But that's all well and good. I still just look at what happens in terms of centre-forward. I think we really need to go and buy a centre-forward. We lost Scamacca. That does need to be addressed right now, because at the moment, as it stands at the moment, we do actually have, look, if we're playing with two centre-halves, we do have two centre-halves, and then we've got sort of Kehrer and Ogbonna as backup. It's not as desperate. I don't see the same strength in depth at centre-forward. We need a senior centre-forward. We cannot rely on it being Michail Antonio who wants to leave, or Danny Ings who's just unsuited to the manager's style of play. So that's what I think the next thing I want to see is not only us linked with an attacker, it's whatever. It's Fabrizio Romano. What's he say? Here we go. Something like that. That's his catch. That's his catchphrase, isn't it? I don't know. Choose your striker. Hopefully not Youssef En-Nesyri, but whatever. Just a striker. Jonathan David to West Ham. Here we go. It wouldn't be him. He's again unsuited to David Moyes' style of football. Although I would like him. By the way, just before anyone says, "Hold on, Gonzo," I'd really like Jonathan David. So that looks like a really good player, but I don't think he suits David Moyes. So hopefully we get a little bit of good news. I will be back later on, I suspect, with some Lucas Paqueta news.